got
Hmm.
an awesome guest today. He is the host of Hypocritical AF podcast, Albert
Hmm.
Fig. What's going on, man?
What is up, man? Thank you for having me, and thank you for putting up with this low quality.
See, we were just joking about this. You say low quality, and no
Hmm.
disrespect to any of our other guests, but this is a higher end setup you have. I like it, man. You got the two light bulbs behind you. Looks like a
Yeah.
Kobe poster behind
Yes.
you. I
My
like
guy.
it.
Yeah.
And you have the headphones, the mic, like the boom arm, all that stuff. So
Of
just so
course.
everybody knows, we're dealing with a real podcaster here, not just some
Yes.
guest, but a guy that actually does it. So I've got to bring my A game today because you know what you're
Yes.
doing.
Thank
So
you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
for sure, man. Hey, we like to start off the show by letting people know how we're connected with our guests. And
Okay.
I was trying to think, we've been following you on social media, which is the case for a lot of people. Like we get to know people in Sacramento and surrounding areas because we follow them on social media.
Hmm.
But I was trying to think back why I initially started following you in the first place. And it was because I believe last year on social media, on Instagram specifically, there was something called like a Sacramento Awards thing.
Hmm.
It was some kind of competition, which I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if you know the person who was running it. I'm not convinced it was real,
I don't
because
know him personally.
but you
Yeah.
do know him.
Of
Okay,
him.
so I don't. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know how legit it was, but it was the cool thing about it was that we got to get to know some other podcasters, and we were trying to
Yeah.
nominate ourselves. And your name kept coming up. Like I was looking at the post, and it's like hypocritical AF, hypocritical AF,
Right.
Albert Fig. I'm like, dang, I need to check this out because apparently this dude's pretty popular, and I think you were one of the finalists, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was pretty excited. I think I made it to the top three. And again, myself too, I had quote unquote, they call skeptical hippo eyes as well, especially seeing that there was like reservations for like an award ceremony and reserving all this, and then it got canceled because they said it was a bomb threat, and then the page changed all of a sudden. So
That was the
I
thing.
yeah, I agree.
I'm with you. Once I saw that page change, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. What was
Hmm.
this here? But either
Yeah.
way, like I said, it was cool because I got to start following some really cool podcasts and different people. And like I said, we started following you, and then I realized that we also had some guests in common.
Yeah.
We've had Charles Velasco on the show. You have
Yes.
too. Ulysses Garcia, you've had him on a couple times, and I
Yes.
feel like there was one more I can't remember, but that's kind of how we're connected with you. And so,
Hmm.
you've been on this list of people that I've been meaning to reach out to. So I'm glad that we're actually able to connect now, man. I'm looking forward to this
Awesome.
conversation.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
man. So tell me a little bit about your background and who you are and how you got into the podcasting world.
Okay, so my background. So I come from a very small, very, very small area. And then in that very small area, I grew up in a even smaller, like magnified portion. So I grew up in an area here in California called Salinas Valley.
Yep.
A lot of people call it the quote unquote salad bowl because it's mainly known for its agricultural crops and its services and harvesting. And in that, I was born in Salinas, California, and I grew up in these two little small areas. One of them is called Greenfield, and the other one is in San Lucas. My first from like preschool to sixth grade, I was in Greenfield, and then from sixth grade, like literally halfway through sixth grade, my family we got evicted out of our apartment. We had to go move in with my grandparents, and it was from halfway point to sixth grade all the way till high school and graduation. And not only was it just my immediate family, meaning like, my siblings, my mother, it was moving in with also my cousins, my aunts. And I'm Mexican. I come from a Hispanic family, so it's a bunch of tios, tias, primos, primas, and it was like no joke, like 14 of us living together in a two-bedroom, one and a half bath. Not even over exaggerating.
Yeah.
And got out. Literally, I graduated June 24th, 2010, and June 28th, 2010, I took off on a plane and I was gone. I joined the military, and I just knew I wanted to get out of the area, and it was very limited, and my way of thinking, I was very small-minded. I didn't really think much of the world and life at that. So I had a very skewed and minimal view on not just life, but like people and just stuff like that. So joined the army. I was able to interact with a bunch of different people. I learned culturally, so many different types of ethnicities and races, not racists,
Yeah.
races, and
Yeah.
I just love the melting pot of being able to communicate and learn all these things. And then after I got out, I moved straight from there to Sacramento, and I've been here ever since. And I'm saying all this because it goes into, the title of my podcast, Hypocritical AF. I didn't look at myself as a person that would be sitting here in front of you today doing these type of, interviews and connecting like this and networking, because I didn't really believe in that. I didn't understand why people did it. I didn't like the idea of having social media. I didn't understand why people would want to have a camera in front of them, and then let alone be able to communicate and do solo episodes. The thought of myself doing that, I thought of myself like a narcissist, until I started seeing the value that I personally got. I listened to a bunch of podcasts myself, and I enjoyed what I was learning. Like, I actually was learning more through podcasting than I would say school, say classes, than even more so than YouTube. So I love that idea, and I've always been a talker. I've always loved communicating. So the fact that those two together, and I was like, all right, let me see this thing. And it went into, starting my own. This is why I call it Hypocritical AF, because I'm calling myself out. Also embracing adolescence. I feel that there's all of us, we all have a bit of, hypocriticalness in ourselves. And I also feel like it's important to embrace hypocriticalness. And it's not, a bad thing. It's not condescending. It's not a bad image or a bad reputation. It's just all about growth and evolution. It's you can pick out, your flaws from the past, and you can grow up, and you can look at things a different way, and you can, be a hypocrite. And then the AF, it's a double entendre. It's Hypocritical AF stands for as fuck, as you would think,
Yeah.
but it's also my initials, Albert Figueroa. So I'm saying the hypocrite, Albert Figueroa, Hypocritical AF.
That's awesome. Did that hit you right away? Did like that double entendre hit you right away, or is that something that came a little bit later? I honestly, I didn't even put together the AF for your name, but that's super dope.
Yeah. No, not right away. I did enjoy, coming up with different names. It was like, all right, this is what I want. And I just I really enjoyed the word hypocritical.
Sure.
I did enjoy it because the meaning of it.
Right.
I enjoyed it because I felt like it was something that I was also embracing. So I wanted that. And then the AF, I like the fact that, again, there was a double entendre with the fact that you can put emphasis in it and say as fuck, but
Right.
at the same time, it be my initials, and to throw people off like that.
That's awesome, man. And I'll tell you what, if anybody hasn't started a podcast, or hasn't, maybe it's not a podcast, but you've tried naming something,
Yeah.
dude, trying to find a name for something
Oh
is the
yeah.
worst. It's the
Yeah.
worst. I had a list full for this podcast, and there's even days where we're like, do we really want to go with this? Connectable, you know what I'm saying? But man, it's tough finding a name. So
Yeah.
it's cool hearing the backstory to the name of the podcast, because that's actually one of the questions I had for you. And then
Yeah.
hearing your heart behind the podcast too, man. Like, I'm telling anybody who's listening, if you don't want to listen to the podcast after what he just said, then you weren't listening. You need to go back and hear what he said again, because I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, man.
I want to say this too, man, because anytime I find a new podcast, especially when there's a visual element, when they do video, that's
Mhm.
always the first thing I look at. And I mean, I love the visuals that you have for your podcast. Like, it just seems like a dope set that you have. How
Right.
long did it take to create all that? And then, like, I imagine you being a creative, there's
Mhm.
always something that you want to change about the set or the look of it.
Mm.
Like, how often does that idea creep in your mind? We're like, okay, it's good, but it could be better. I want to change something else. Like, how long did that whole process take?
And yeah, I mean, that's, it's the benefits and the positives, it's the pros and cons to having that creative itch, is that you're constantly looking at ways to make it better, and nothing's ever, good enough. Um, that, and when you also incorporate the fact that the way my mind works is I overanalyze things. I overthink too much, in a good way and a bad thing. The good things is that it forces me to adapt and to change and to constantly want to, strive for more. But the bad thing in that is that I also, believe it or not, I also lose a lot of sleep because of it. I stress about it. I think about it. I bring some of that sometimes, to a fault. I'll bring that, that stress or that emotion back with me at home. And then that might cause some turmoil, so it's not as, glitz and glamorous as it might seem. But with building the set, I mean, I literally had no background in set designing, set dressing, or even construction at that. This, what you see behind me, this is the set. If you look at the videos, you'll be able to see, if you look at episode 1 up until all the way, the most recent one in episode 97, you can see the changes that were there. And, even with lighting upgrades, with learning about color grading, and and angles and dimensions and fill lights, you know, and stuff like that. So there was always a constant. Each episode was, you know, going up there. But this actually started from scratch. This wasn't here. This was just 2x4s. You know, it was a blank wall, nothing other than, like I said, just 2x4s. And I built everything up myself. I had a way of what I wanted to kind of make it. My approach was to make it as comfortable and coziness as possible. I didn't want to go too futuristic in it because one, I was budgeting. The budget was from scratch, so I didn't have all the funds to necessarily have all the high tech, you know, things that you would see in professional podcasting.
Sure.
But at the same time, I didn't want to make it seem like I didn't put the effort in. And I wanted people to, when they come here, I wanted them to see and be like, wow, like this, like they wanted to feel like they actually are walking into a set or onto a set, I should say.
Right.
And so far, you know, the feedback has been positive.
That's awesome. It's funny you mentioned the futuristic thing. Do you remember when Joe Rogan first moved to Texas and he had that brand new set? It was like that red background, and
looked like a red pill, the oval.
But he kept saying like people hate this set, and then he ended up changing it, right? And it was a little bit more toned down, and people seem to enjoy that more. But it is interesting because if it's like you said, if it's too high tech, if it's too out there, then it does take away from the podcast, right? Like the main thing about podcasts is obviously there's that visual element, but you want them to hear the words that you're speaking or the words that your guest is speaking. And so, it's just interesting, like all that stuff that could potentially take away from it. And yet, like you said, as a creative, you have to constantly be thinking about that and what's going to be what's going to enhance the experience without taking away from the words that we're trying to communicate. So it's an interesting balance for sure.
Yeah. And it's also, you know, they don't embrace change right away, especially if you get that shock value. It's going to throw things off for a bit, you know, to kind of correlate it to I don't know if this audience will will kind of get this reference, but with the UFC, they had the old belts, and it was, you know, the same belts for years, and then they came out with a new belt, and people were laughing at it. They were saying it looked like freaking Power Rangers belt. They were saying that it just, what is this? What is that? And now, after the initial, you know, first shockwave, then it was like people fall to understand it and love it and appreciate it more. And that's the same thing with podcasting. And to talk about Joe Rogan, yeah, myself too, I liked it. I didn't see a problem with it. It would take people a little bit more time to adjust to it, and they will. But also, I can see where they're coming from in that they're so used, you know, at that time, Joe Rogan was past like 1,000 episodes, you know, they're so used and accustomed to seeing that. Right. And they felt like it was more his style. And then so to switch it up and then to go to Spotify, I'm sure they were like, oh, like you changed, you know, you switched up or something like that, you know?
That is interesting, especially when you're a leader in an industry, whatever that might be, or whatever craft that you're focused on. Like when you are a leader and you're leading the way and you're a trailblazer, that is the challenging part, right? Like you have to almost have a certain mental toughness that you're willing to keep pressing forward, even though people may not understand it yet. And
exactly.
And it's crazy too, because sometimes people in those positions, they're the trailblazer, and they go through hell, right, to pave that way for people. And everybody's constantly negative. And then once people finally catch on, a lot of times they're not given the credit they deserve until way later, right? So it's just the price you pay when you're a trailblazer in a certain industry. So, you know, but you have to be willing to keep pressing forward even when people don't understand. You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an interesting balance for sure. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to mention before I forget and get too distracted, it's something I forgot what you said, but something you said reminded me of this. A while ago, you had posted something on Instagram. Basically, you came on and just said, hey, it was like an apology or an accountability post. I think you said something to the effect of, hey, I haven't been posting podcasts as consistently as I wanted to. I want to apologize to you guys, the audience, and I'm going to do better because, you know, I'm kind of paraphrasing what you said. I'm sure you don't remember exactly.
Right. I remember. Yeah.
But I remember I made note of that because I appreciated that, because too many times, especially with podcasts, and I'm sure you've experienced it before being a podcast listener, I'll find a really dope podcast and they're like, okay, we're going to do this thing, you know, twice a week, and we're going to, you know, da. And then, you know, 2 weeks later, they just kind of ghost their audience. And then, you know, it's not until like 6 months later you hear it's like, oh, hey, we stopped doing the podcast. Like, man, you had me invested. I was really excited, looking forward to it on Monday mornings, and then you just kind of disappear. And I hate when podcasts do that, because I feel like
Hmm.
you're starting to toy with people's time and their,
Yeah.
what they value, and they're giving you their time, and then all of a sudden you just kind of throw it away. So the fact that you came on Instagram and said, "Hey, this is where I could do better. I plan on doing it. So be prepared, because I'm gonna make these steps to adjust." Like, I
Hmm.
appreciated that, man, because I think consistency is such a big part of podcasting, and if you're not willing to be consistent, then you may not want to do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember the feeling and the motion that I was going into that one, which, to the outside people looking in, or, for people that are listening that may not understand it. It was so like, I felt the, not pressure's not the word to use, but I felt the urge to apologize for that and everything. And it's because even though the name of the podcast is Hypocritical, um, I felt like a hypocrite, because every week you hear me on here talking about consistency and how you have to be consistent and how I'm going to be here, and then this and this and this and that. And I had, even though, I could throw in, excuses about, like, I literally was in a different state. I literally was away from home 4 days a week. I literally didn't have any equipment, or I literally had two guests of mine canceled the day of.
Oh, been
That's
there.
cool and all, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's been like that back to back the day of.
Yeah.
And you can use those excuses and you can put that all out there, but it's still, I would strive to be like, but hey, you still got to make it happen. Because I've done that. I've done episodes. I've recorded at 3 a.m. literally the night before. I've recorded at 3 p.m. the day of, when it's supposed to drop at 7. I've recorded on the fly, because a person, I was in a different city ready to record, and they didn't show up, or, whatever the case may be. And I've done those things. And for those two instances, I didn't. And I felt like, man, I got to hold myself accountable, but I'm also going to say it openly and verbally tell it to the audience. So that way they can also hold myself accountable, because I've also encountered the same thing as you did, when you invest yourself in a podcast, and then they slowly slip off, and then that factor of wanting them goes away. And I know I didn't want that. I didn't want that to go away. So I made it a thing. So every single week, you're going to see the podcast, whether it be a clip, a post, a highlight, a retweet, a visual of me doing the editing, just saying like, hey, episode on the way, because at least
Yeah.
you're going to see it. I want you to see it every single week.
Right.
That was the idea of it. I want to put it in your brain and embed that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate everything you're saying, because I've been in similar situations where, I'll be there, and like you said, the guest that was supposed to be there ended up canceling last minute. And it's you have to get one out, but that's like, dang, I got to record this one by myself, or you got to figure scramble. And there's definitely times where you're like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'd rather just,
Yeah.
call it this week. And we've done it one time where we said, okay, no episode this week, we'll tune back in next week. Um, but all of those different struggles of podcasting and things that people don't really think about, because I think sometimes when people start podcasts, and I know some people that have started it and it didn't go very well or very long.
Yeah.
I think that they never said it, but some of the ways they were talking about it made it seem like, well, me and my buddies are super funny together, and
Mm-hmm.
we can talk a lot, and we're gonna do this podcast, and it's like, all right. And then sure enough, 2 episodes later, it's gone, because I think they realized how much work actually
Yeah.
goes into making it happen. And it's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, I'm passionate about podcasting. We've been doing it for 5 years now, but it's a lot of work. And
Mm-hmm.
to say it's not would be crazy. So you kind of sign, when you do it and you want to be consistent, you are signing up for a decent amount of challenges and work that you have to do. But it's,
Right.
for me, man, it's worth it. And it seems like for you too. I mean, you're at 97.
Yeah. 97 just dropped the most recent one, 97, on the way to 100.
There
In
you
less
go.
than 2 years with bonus ones and everything. When you add it all up, uh, it, I've when you add it all up, it's under two, knocking out 100.
That's awesome, man. We actually
Yeah.
just celebrated this episode here will be, I think, episode 102. So we actually just celebrated
Hey,
100, and it's a cool. I don't care
hey,
what anybody says. Some people are like, it's at 100. No, it's a big deal. It's a lot of fun. We celebrate it, because especially now,
yeah.
man. I feel like anytime you have a chance to celebrate something, you got to do it, just because of how crazy the world is
Of
right now.
course, every accomplishment, every goal is a milestone.
Yep.
Anytime you can reach something, the fact that you were even, I talked about this in another episode. The fact that we're even close to get 100 to 100, sorry, is a blessing. A lot of times I was doing some research on podcasting, and they said the average podcast length from the time a person starts it to the time it ends, the average a person will last is 20 episodes.
Yep.
And that's with full production and everything. They said the average one ends at episode 20, so you all with going to 100, you've already done more than 70% of other podcasters, just by even getting there. A lot of them, they quit after like you said, the first two. So the fact that the average is 20, I mean, that says a lot.
Yeah. Same to you, man. That's what I told when my co-host, who's obviously not here, Deb, tonight, but when we first started podcasting, this was not our first podcast. We had a different podcast that we started, 5 years ago, but that was the one thing I joked about, because I saw the same stat. I said, okay, no matter what happens, we have to at least make it to 20. Like, we got to make it beyond 20. You can't be part of the statistics. So let's get beyond that and figure it out from there. So luckily, we've both enjoyed it, and we both continue to do it, at this point.
Amazing.
So, yeah, man, it's fun. Like I said, I love just the idea of having conversations with people. And then obviously as a listener too, when I'm listening to podcasts, like, we have the opportunity to listen to some of the smartest people, some of the most brilliant minds, some of the funniest people, most entertaining people. And it's all free. For the most part, it's free, right? Like,
for the most part, yeah.
You know what I mean? But let me ask you this. And I don't know if you feel comfortable saying this.
Let's go. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Because I enjoy this question. My co-host, she's not as big a fan of this question. But
let's go. I'm all for it.
So do you have a favorite guest that you've had on your show?
You know what? I swear to God, I can't make this up. Just last week, I was on another podcast. They asked me the same exact question.
Did they?
And I answered it, but in a different from a different approach. So
okay.
As of right now, I wouldn't say I have a favorite guest, but I can tell you I have my favorite episode. Okay. My favorite episode was the most fulfilling episode, and it was one that has that wasn't necessarily I didn't do it for my benefit. I didn't do it to elevate the podcast. I didn't do it for notoriety or anything. But the episode was there was a little boy. He was one and a half, and he was attacked by 5 pit bulls in the front yard of his own home. Yeah. And the 5 pit bulls were his neighbors, and his name is little baby JJ. And this happened in Spencer, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it was the most fulfilling and the most favorite episode was because at first, so some background information on it. So the parents, Jose and Cassandra Rodriguez, we actually are from the same city, same area. They went to high school with my sisters, my older sisters. They went to the same high school, so they know of each other. The little boy is exactly 1 month older than my son. And when this attack first happened in February, it was, a big thing, especially back home. And then within our little small circle, it was a big thing. And I remember specifically saying, because the same night, the parents made a conscious decision that they wanted to post pictures of the little boy's, the accident and all his wounds. And they said they wanted to do that to show people the extent and how serious this was and how important it is to, make sure you have a fence and a leash and basically like pet safety, especially when you're dealing with 5 pit bulls. Sure. So when they put the photos, I remember specifically saying, don't show me those photos. I don't want to see those photos, because as a parent, and maybe you can speak for this too yourself, as a parent, things hit a little bit harder, especially 100%. When you find out that it was a little boy, and then you find out that, the little boy is only a month older than my son. So I was like, I don't want to see that. I just knew that emotionally it was going to damage me, scar me. And I know I wasn't, even though I've seen some shit, right? Like I've seen some shit, I just didn't want to have that image in my mind, in my head. And so fast forward, literally 3 weeks to a month later, I was scrolling on Instagram through people's stories, the IG stories. And so I saw that someone had did a repost of the little boy. And this is how I connected the dots, because I didn't even see the post. I didn't see the full post. I didn't see the name. I didn't know what it was, but I just saw the scars and everything. And in that moment, I instantly knew it's the little boy. So I knew without even seeing it. Yeah. So sure enough, once I saw it, I was like, man, I'm going to look. And I clicked on it and I went to the page, and I remember I just started crying. I was just like tears going down, like literally crying. I was like, I felt so guilty, because I was like, how the hell did I not want to see this? And how highlight this, and bring this to light, because a lot of people didn't know about this. They were getting negative press locally from the news, and they were getting painted in a negative image. So I reached out. We were able to get in contact. I flew out there. So I flew myself out there, got my hotel. I got a rental car. They came at me with open arms. I was able to go to the children's hospital. I was able to see the little boy.
Wow.
I was able to give them gifts. I was able to record with them. I flew all my equipment over there. I, set up a multicam angle with them all by myself, produced the whole thing by myself, edited the whole thing by myself. All expenses covered by myself.
Yeah.
And, I didn't monetize off anything off the episode, and nor was it my intentions to. I just wanted to highlight as much as I can.
Right.
So when I was able to put that out, I got a better feeling of fulfillment, and I would say my favorite one so far.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the things I had on my notes too, because I remember, obviously, if anybody's not familiar with the hypocritical AF Instagram and the feel and the look and the tone and all that stuff, like you guys talk about serious stuff, but usually it's like fun. You guys have interesting conversations with artists, musicians, buddies of yours, like kind of just spreads all across the board.
Yeah.
And so I remember that one really stuck out, that post, because when you posted it, the video of yourself explaining the situation had a very different tone. It had a very different feel. Like, oh, wait a minute, what is going on here? And I'm like, my first thought was like, oh, is he changing something about the podcast? It just felt like one of those, is the podcast.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you start listening to it. It's like, oh, this is really interesting. This is a crazy story. And so, and I think that's awesome, man. Like, so too many times, like there's people that want to do podcasts, and I think it's to highlight themselves. Like, look at how funny I am. Look at how interesting I am, how interesting I am, how smart I am. But really, man, I always believe it's an opportunity to highlight things like this that are more important, things that are bigger than ourselves. So yeah, I thought that was awesome, man, that you did that. And not only did that, but you flew out there and all of that. And please forgive me if you said this already, but like how soon after the incident did you guys record?
So the incident was in February. And like I said, I didn't catch wind of it until like within the next 2 days that it happened. And then for 3 weeks, almost to a whole month after, I avoided it.
Yeah.
And then when I saw it, and I was like, I felt instantly guilty, and I was like, what am I doing? Use this platform to kind of give them their voice, because like I said, they had only done 2 interviews prior. And one of them was with the local news, and it was like 10 seconds, and it was just highlighted, like, edited things, and they were getting painted as a negative light. They were actually facing child neglect charges. They had people in the community like bashing them. They were getting hate, death threats. They had started a GoFundMe page, and people started, because the way that the news painted them, they started getting the GoFundMe payments request, like was refunded or something like that. Like they started red flagging it. Yeah. They were red flagging the post. And then that's when I decided, okay, let's do this. And then it was like, when do we do it? What time frame fits? Because, at a children's hospital, mind you, they're still maybe COVID conscious and in a different state.
Sure.
And it was like, where can we record? They're like, we record here and then this. And I was actually, let's do this. So by the time we actually recorded, it was actually Mother's Day weekend.
Dang.
So yeah.
So since February. So really, with something like that traumatic, it's really not much time. So when they came on your podcast, I saw the clips. I'm not gonna be honest, I didn't listen to the full episode, but I did watch the clips. I imagine that the amount of raw emotion was still pretty high at that point.
Yeah, it was tough. Definitely tough when you hear them in detail. And I think that was my intent for this episode, was for them to just be like, yo, say whatever you guys got to say.
Sure.
Use this at a time to explain or kind of, defend yourselves and kind of, shut the naysayers down and tell your side of the story that's not edited, that's not, and we were able to do that. And so it was emotional, the parent, there were tears, there were tissue papers, but at the same time, it was also like a joyous moment, because they actually got to say what they wanted to say and break it down, right? Nothing forced, because they had been They had done a 15-minute phone interview, but it was really quick, 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 quick. They've done the IG lives, but it was just quick questions. But I also felt like people were asking the wrong things. Like, it's easy to be like, "Is the baby okay?" It's easy to say, "Oh my God, how is he going to be like in the future?" But I actually was curious more on. I asked them, like, what is the mental state of the siblings that had to witness that, because there were 7 kids.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What were the kid? What about the 2 siblings, his 2 sisters that were there? How did they feel like witness it? How did they feel? And
Right.
the parents would tell me that that they weren't lying. They said the little girls were having survivor's guilt. They were very like a dark and ominous mood, and they weren't the same. The dad was like, he's avoiding therapy right now in the moment. Um, Working 2 jobs. How is the mom doing? How are the other kids getting fed? So those type of questions are the things I was asking than the straight point blank, obvious questions.
Yeah. No, and like I said, man, I could keep saying it, but I appreciate that you took the time to do it, because like I said, it's an important, those types of things are really important. Like I said, they're bigger than us. So
Yeah.
it's fun. Obviously, podcasting is fun. It's entertaining. We enjoy it, having fun conversations about,
Yeah.
life, whatever, we're talking about. But, sometimes we've got to have those conversations about things that are bigger than us. So I appreciate that you did that,
Yeah.
man.
And I switch it
Um,
up because I get a wide variety of guests, so it's, some might be entertaining, some might be hilarious. Some of them might be, like bullshitting right here. And some of them
yeah,
I'm trying to actually deliver value,
right.
whether that be in the form of real estate, finance, a person's background, a story, and then you might get a story like that.
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, that leads me to my next question is, obviously, and I'm sure you have a list of people in your mind. I know I do. I know my
Yeah.
co-host does. There's a list of people, like there's the dream guest, right? Like if you could
Right,
have any
right.
guest on the show, uh,
Yeah.
who's on that list for you? Who's at the top of that list?
A top, it's so, ooh, man, this is a harder question than the favorite guest
I-
one, because I have so many different people that I would love to have on.
like picking a
But
favorite kid.
if you ask me, the first immediate one comes to mind is, his name is Charlemagne the God. I don't know if you guys know
Sure.
him.
Yeah, he's huge.
Controversial, I get it. A lot of people
Yeah.
might not,
That's why he's
agree with
popular
them
though.
a lot of time. But I would really love to have him. I would just we. I'm not saying we're identical a lot of things. I'm not saying we've been through the same shit, but similar paths. And I appreciate and I love the growth and the embracefulness of mental health, and understanding, his flaws, and
Yeah.
embracing those, acknowledging them, and putting them out there in front of you and be like, this is this. And and then just what he's doing locally, financially, entrepreneurship. That's like one of the first, the top of my guess. I would say
That'd be great.
another one would be Andrew Schultz, personal,
I was gonna
a
say,
favorite, yeah, a comedian of mine, a favorite comedian, and just his mindset. He had an interesting thing. That's actually where I get the consistency from. And he actually adopted it from an artist named Russ, when he was
mhm,
saying that he made it a thing to put out a comedy, like a YouTube clip, or make something with I want to say it's YouTube clip or a stand up 52 weeks, and put it out there
right.
on YouTube. So 52 weeks straight of doing it. And it's the same thing with Russ. He said he was going to put out a song every single week for a year, 52 songs. And he was blowing up on SoundCloud and everything.
Yeah.
And so he took that approach. And then that's where this came from, when I was trying to figure out how I want to do the podcast, whether it be bi-weekly, monthly, or weekly. I said, if these guys are doing, if they're doing this every single week, and then I was looking at other podcasters and they're doing it every single week, even though I'm coming from a very minimal space, and maybe I don't have the, same production value or the same budget, I'm going to incorporate that same mindset, and I'm going to do this every single week for 52 weeks. And
Yeah.
so that's
That's
another
awesome.
person I would, credit to have on.
Yeah, no, Schultz, both those guys would be great. But
Yeah.
I do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a little while ago, every once in a while, you'll post some pictures from Punchline, right? You're
Right.
you're a you're a comedy fan.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Been to a few of them, man. Yeah. Comedy's, it's an outlet. It's a
yeah,
time to get away. It's a night out, but also I just enjoy comedy, and breaking it down. Maybe I'm not
yeah,
saying I'm a freaking connoisseur of comedy,
yeah,
but I just appreciate the, the stage presence, the confidence, the balls it takes to go up there and do something like that, but be able to keep someone entertained, to be able to grab someone's attention. You could say the same thing for doing a solo episode, to keep a person's attention span on you for that long,
Yep.
it's you have to bring them in, you know what I mean? So maybe it's something that I just appreciate, especially especially that I do solo episodes.
100%. No, it's not easy. I have another podcast where I've done some just recently.
Yeah.
Not my favorite thing. I'd rather have a conversation like this, but
Yeah,
we talk about
definitely.
sometimes you got to do it. But man, the stand up world, I love stand up. I'm a big fan as well. I love Punchline too, man. I feel like we're
Yeah.
super lucky to have Punchline in our backyard because
Yeah.
I personally like it. I think it's a good club. No disrespect to the other clubs in the area. I just think they're the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. I've been to Calusa too. I've been to that one too.
Okay, I don't want to bash on Calusa. Calusa was weird because I went there. I saw my brother and I went to go see the fighter and the kid there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I went too. Well, no, it wasn't the Fighter the Kid, but I saw Brendan Schaub there.
Oh, you saw Shaw there. So we didn't go to that one.
Yeah.
This was quite a few years ago when him and Callum were doing the like the
The
actual
tours.
like the tour on with the podcast. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first time we saw it was at Punchline, and then a few
Hmm.
months later they went to Calusa, and I'm like, well, let's just go. And it was
Yeah.
a drive. I'd never been out to Calusa Casino before. That was very
Yeah, it's a
different
little
for
mob.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Like I
Yeah,
was not
it's
what I
out there for
expected.
sure.
But no, comedy's fun, man. Have you had any comedians on your podcast?
No, not officially. I did reach out to Mars Parker,
Mhm.
a local comic here in Sacramento.
Yeah.
We were talking a bit. Scheduling just didn't line up. We're trying to get it for these days, but it was like, oh, I can only do it during the day. Very minimal talking, you know what I'm saying? And I definitely want to have him on. And that'd be
awesome.
like unless I'm slipping my mind, I think that's the only one or closest I've got to it.
Yeah.
I've reached out to Andrew Schultz plenty of times. He still hasn't got back at me, but it comes with the
Oh,
business.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. That's always as like a person who podcasts as well. I shouldn't even ask you that question. Like, hey, because once someone asks you like start like going back to the Rolodex of like your guests, it's like I
Yeah.
know I insulted somebody for sure. I
Yeah.
forgot someone. Now they're offended.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've reached out to Mikey Winfield before.
Oh, okay.
I
Nothing
tried to
yet.
get him. Well, he did reach back. I reached out with an email. And he's like, "How many
Yeah.
subscribers do you have?" I'm like, this is not going to go
Oh,
well.
there you go. Yeah, yeah. You
Which is
start going
again,
through all that.
like you said, it's the business part of it, which is not offensive to me. But
Yeah.
like well, that we tried. But
Yeah.
yeah, we've had a couple of comedians on from Atlanta. So
Okay.
they have a sports and comedy podcast. So we've
Yeah.
had them on the show
I like
before.
Atlanta. I've been to Atlanta a few times.
I've never been. I heard it's fun though.
It is. I mean, it's different for sure. It's
Yeah.
interesting. It's different, but
Yeah.
it's also like just really elegant. Like it's nice. When you think about like nice things, like some people might be like, "Well, downtown Sacramento is so nice." Atlanta is nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I haven't gotten out too much as far as traveling, but it is interesting when you go to a new city and you actually like I have my wife's family lives in Chicago. Some of her family lives in Chicago, and so my first time going to downtown Chicago, it's like, oh, like this place is pretty dope. Like you just don't realize it until you actually see it. Like you hear the stories, you hear people talk about it, but once you actually experience it for yourself,
Right.
it's pretty interesting. And like you had mentioned earlier, your military background
Hmm.
is a big part of you being able to see a lot of the world, which, like you said, as a podcaster, is huge, man. Like there's so much experience that you get to put into the podcast, and
Yeah.
it's an easy way to connect with people. Like that's huge.
Yeah. And like I said, I was stationed in Georgia too, so it literally was only like an hour away from Atlanta.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
nice. That's awesome, man. So what's I know we only have you for a few more minutes here. So we gotta get you out of here, but
Yeah. No worries.
what is well? Let me ask you. I should have asked this a while ago, but what was the response like from people when you first started podcasting? Because I'm always interested because when we again like with podcasting or any kind of art form, we have this idea of what it's going to be like and what the response is going to be like, and then
Mhm.
sometimes it's better than we expect, or sometimes it's not even close to what we were hoping. So, what was the response like when you first started podcasting?
So I definitely didn't tell. A lot of people did not know, so which is a good thing
Sure.
because you get the surprise factor, the surprise element, which I feel like you have to take advantage of because that's when you get the most, you can garnish the most attention, you get the most eyeballs,
Sure.
and it's curiosity, right? People want to know what is or what's the approach you're going. So I didn't even announce it. I made sure that I had built up a website. I had that established 31st. I had made myself like an RSS feed or like a web hosting site, so I know where I can upload everything. I made myself a YouTube page, an email, the socials, And I started kind of throwing little hints like, hey, upcoming thing December 1st, stuff like that. Maybe you might have posted a picture of like this, half of this, kind of build that, that shock value, like I said.
Yeah.
And then people were thinking, I don't know why, but some people at first were just like, oh, are you gonna drop a mixtape soon? I don't know if they were joking, right? And they're like, yeah, I can't wait for the album or new music. Probably
Yeah.
because, like I said, I have like friends who, who are musically inclined
Sure.
and who make music and everything. So maybe they thought I was gonna be doing that too. And it's far off because I cannot sing and I cannot rap.
Oh, I
So
was gonna ask, do you have any kind of musical background?
no, man. I
Oh,
mean,
man.
like in high school, in middle school, yeah, I wanted to be a rapper, but who
Sure.
didn't, when they're listening to Lil Bow Wow or something. So,
Yeah.
so it's, I mean,
Yeah.
I played instruments for like a little while, for like a hot second. Maybe I got a coffee,
Yeah.
but nothing that was gonna make myself stand out. So at
That's
first
funny.
it was people thinking I was gonna, drop music, and then and then on top of that, the first episode that I had was a guest, and we talked about colleges and whether they're and at that time was 2020. It was like and this was COVID, so it was like, is college going to change going forward? Is everything going to be online or
Right.
via Zoom? Are colleges beneficial in your opinion? Is this something people should really like go in lifetime debts for and stuff like that? So
Sure.
there was some comedic tones to it, but it wasn't like straight up like being a jackass or something like
Yeah.
that. So people were like kind of like surprised by it, and definitely got a lot of attention at the beginning. So I would say, yeah, they were surprised for the most part, and some of them stuck. Some people have stuck, hang on, and there's a few stragglers, and there's people that kind of just like, all right, they're over it, which
Sure.
is fine, because this is every single week. You're not gonna, I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
again. It's not music, like,
Right.
yeah,
Right. Oh no, 100%. That stuff's gonna happen. They're like, yeah, I found a new podcast I like better. I'm like, hey,
right.
hey, I'm a fan of podcasting. Enjoy your podcast.
Yeah, I'm like,
I'm
I
not.
get
I'm
it. I
not
listened to like 7, 9 of them. So yeah.
exactly. Just don't leave a 1-star review on your way out.
Yeah,
As long as
yeah,
you
yeah,
don't do that,
exactly.
we're cool. No problem.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
yeah, that's interesting. It is always funny when someone finds out you have a podcast and then
Mhm.
they talk to you in person, like, hey, I saw you had a podcast. Because I don't know about you, but for me, I'm like, I really need to start thinking like, did I say anything that I'm gonna regret in this conversation right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for me too is like, luckily, it's weird because I do more, promoting of it and everything online than I do like in person.
Right.
And that's maybe like a flaw or a downside, is that I should do it more when I'm around people and everything. But in certain environments, I will. But if I'm meeting a brand new person or something like that, I'm not gonna be like, hey, I have a podcast, check it out.
I've never done that. I've
Yeah,
never done
no,
that.
no, yeah.
It's a little more
Unless like
uncomfortable that way.
unless like I said, it depends on the environment. Like I've been to like social gathering things, and I've been to a networking dinner or something like that. And in that aspect, they'll ask me, okay, what do you do? What do you do? And
Yep.
so in those type of things, yeah, but it just depends on the environment.
Yeah. 100%. Um, well, hey man, this has been a lot of fun. Like I said, I want to be respectful of your time. Let me ask you this one last
Yeah,
question. One last
of
question before
course.
we get
Yeah.
you out of here. Because I know that on your podcast, you have a lot of musicians. Like you said, people
Yeah.
thought you were going to drop a mixtape for some reason,
Yeah,
probably
for
because of
real.
your connection to the music world. I
Yeah.
know just recently you posted something about going to an album listening party and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, I get the sense that you're a big hip hop fan based on what
Yeah,
you've said already. I'm a huge
definitely.
hip hop fan. Who's your favorite artist all time?
All time. Oh man, see, the questions are getting harder. All time hip hop. If I
Or
damn,
did you have an answer for right now? Because it sounded like you might have had an answer like our favorite artist
there's
right now.
it's just because it's so much. There's so much music. The output is, now that we're in the streaming service. It's
Mm-hmm.
so many artists. I'll give you a top my top three right now, I would say,
Okay.
versus all time.
Yeah.
My top three hip hop artists. And this first answer is only because he just recently came out after a 5 year hiatus. But it's Kendrick Lamar.
Sure.
He's up there for sure. It's LaRussell
Okay.
from Vallejo, podcast alum. I'm not
Yeah.
just saying that because he's been on the podcast, and I talk about him like all the time too. But no, it's genuinely like the amount of, forget about the amount, the quality of music that he's putting out and the consistency of it, and the his tone and his cadence to what he's saying, and it's not your everyday like, I got I got these chains, I got this bottle, I got this Ferrari, not like he's
Sure.
music, that's right there. And then of course, no matter whether it's all time or current, I'm always going to say J. Cole.
Okay. Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go.
Which is kind of like the, generic answers if you think about it, you know what I mean? Like with Kendrick and J. Cole, but those are the ones. But I'll throw Joey Badass in there too with his most recent project.
Yeah.
But all time, shit.
It's a tough question. It's an unfair question.
It's all time, bro, man. Man. Can I possibly give like a top 2 group? Does that
Yeah,
maybe?
please. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do a Tribe Called Quest.
There you go.
And
Very
I'm
nice.
gonna go Wu-Tang all time.
All these answers, you can't go wrong. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with La Russell. I know you've had him on your podcast a few times, but
yeah,
I need to check out his music for sure. But everybody else, very
so
familiar
much music,
with.
bro.
What's your favorite Kendrick album? Before we get out of
Kendrick album, man. There might be recency bias, but I'm really enjoying his most recent project. You know what I mean?
Really? Okay. Interesting.
This might be my favorite between that one and maybe To Pimp a Butterfly, but I would say this one only because I broke this down in another episode of mine too. I just feel like what he's saying right now,
yeah,
Cole like literally goes in line with how I'm feeling and then how I'm also growing and embracing adolescence and being a parent and maybe also again acknowledging and putting your flaws out there in front of face value and talking about therapy and talking about changing mindsets and stuff like that. It's also it just kind of echoes what I'm saying, or maybe I'm echoing what he's saying. So I just feel like it's for some reason it went at a perfect time in my life. So maybe that's why I feel that it's my favorite one. Like I said, that might be recency bias, but if I had to eliminate that one, I would say To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. I think that's the thing about music. I think a lot of times those albums, those songs, those artists, we get connected with them because of when they hit at a certain time in our life, and all of a sudden it increases the value of whatever they're saying. So that makes 100% sense for sure. I'm personally, I it's hard for me to get past Good Kid, Mad City. That's just always one of my favorites. But you really can't go wrong with really can't go wrong with this stuff. He's a monster. So, anyways, we're gonna get you out of here, man. Where can we follow you? Your podcast, social media, all those things.
Thank you. Of course, yeah. Instagram is probably the go-to one for both my Instagram and the podcast page. My Instagram is at Albert_Fig. The podcast page is at Hypocritical AF podcast. Twitter, Hypocritical_AF. YouTube, just type in Hypocritical AF podcast. I put clips out there, full episodes, shorts. Instagram, it's pretty much primarily dominating all the socials. TikTok is there too, but the TikTok is just the same videos I put on Instagram on TikTok. So if you've preferred TikTok for their algorithms, I get it. And on the TikTok, it's just Hypocritical AF podcast. And that's where you'll find me on everything. And yeah, so the podcast is strictly just podcast stuff. And in my page, you'll find all kinds of different things, man, depending on how I'm feeling that day or the mood or what I'm working on and stuff like that.
Awesome. So based on all that, if you guys can't find him, you're not trying hard enough. He's out there for you to find. Yeah. So
definitely.
Albert, man, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been a fun conversation. We'll have to pick up this conversation at another point sometime.
I'm definitely down. Definitely down for that.
Appreciate it, man. So good luck with everything. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye, man. Peace. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.